Sounds like people defending their faves on social media. For what? For what? And hello, welcome to a new video. We're gonna explore something together. I have no idea which way this video is going to go, if it's going to be funny, if it's simply going to be nostalgic. You've read the title. We are going to be diving into the hit series from, I don't even know when it's from. I remember reading it, I believe, in either middle school or high school. The best-selling series from the early to mid 2000s, The Uglies. I don't know why, but this is a series that just, maybe it was a comfort read for me, but maybe only the first one. I have this very vague memory of this book and the concept of this book, and I sort of just want to read it again and figure out what's going on with you. I don't know if it's going to be similar to, I feel like it's not going to be, but along the same vein as Hush Hush and things like that, all of the kind of trending young adult series of my childhood, my young adult time. I don't think it's going to be super funny. I think it's actually going to be a little sad. I don't know. But I know that since so many of you guys watching we're from the same generation, I feel like if I'm curious about a world and returning to it and like what actually happened in that book, I feel like some of you might be. So if you just want to hear about a popular book series that was part of the golden age of dystopian novels, we're going to dive in. And I'm going in, I haven't checked anything. I don't know anything about it other than it was supposed to be 3 books, but now I think it's 4. I don't know if the 4th one is like an extra or what. But we're going to try and read the whole series. And they also got new covers, which I really don't agree with. I'm obsessed with the first I think it's just because it's what I'm used to, but the kind of original covers, that cover is also always kind of burned into my mind. Speaking of design, though, I want to give a shout out to the sponsor of this video before we fully dive in, which is Squarespace. I've used Squarespace for years to host my personal website that I use as a blog, but because of all of their different features, you can use it for anything from making a community that has separate like paid membership spaces to an online shop because they manage monetization features and stuff. Wonderful analytics features, great design help for someone who knows nothing about setting up a website. You can create a really beautiful site in just a couple of clicks, have it up, ready to go. So if that interests you at all, if you are looking for a place to host your online presence, you can use my code that's in the description box, squarespace.com/caricanread, to get a free trial and 10% off of your first website or domain. So highly recommend, always love to you, Squarespace. So let's look up what this book is actually about. So, okay, what I remember, going in clean, I remember that there is a society, as there always is, that when you turn a certain age, you can choose whether or not to essentially get plastic surgery and become a pretty. And if you don't, you're kind of like an outcast. I remember in my vision, the book starts with our girl going to her like initiation party or something. There's a party. I distinctly remember a scene with a party. Maybe it's kind of on a coast looking over dark water. Perhaps it's like a Gatsby situation where there's something on the other side of the water and she's looking longingly at it. Maybe that's where the ugly people live. And I remember her not wanting to do the procedure because I think there's a twist. And I think the procedure might also include losing more than just your physical sense of self. That's all I got. Let's see. Also, there's a film, which I never watched, but perhaps we should. Yeah, her name's Tally. Okay, it's all coming. Okay, The Uglies, or just Uglies by Scott Westerfield, was published in February of 2005. So yeah, I was just starting high school, ending middle school, just starting high school. Here's what Goodreads says. Tally is about to turn 16 and she can't wait. In just a few weeks, she'll have the operation that will turn her from a repellent ugly into a stunning pretty. And as a pretty, she'll be catapulted into a high-tech paradise where her only job is to have fun. But Tally's new friend Shay isn't sure she wants to become a pretty. When Shay runs away, Tally learns about a whole new side of the pretty world. And it isn't very pretty. The authorities offer Tally a choice: find her friend and turn her in, or never turn pretty at all. Tally's choice will change her world forever. So it's 425 pages. It is considered a dystopian sci-fi fantasy romance. What? They just put it in everything? Okay. Well, anyway, yeah, we're gonna dive in. So some context I think is needed. 2005, no one had social media, pretty much, in terms of like the young people who were reading this book. I knew of Facebook, but I remember it being really ugly. The only time I used the internet, like my homeroom was in the tech lab, so we had computers. I spent my homeroom playing addictinggames.com, the little helicopter game. Yeah. So we didn't really I think MySpace was a thing, but like it was brand new. So this idea of how we see beauty today and how aware we are of our faces and things like that, I think that it felt like, to me, from what I remember, there definitely was like a separate world of pretty people, like celebrities, whatever, like people who were on magazines were still very separate. Like you couldn't follow your favorite model on Instagram and see her doing stupid, like looking like a normal person every day. So there was very much this kind of otherness to the kind of upper echelon, the celebrity world. And also like plastic surgery obviously was a thing, but it wasn't something that I ever thought. It felt so extreme. Even Botox, it was like, I think it was more pervasive than we thought it was, but no one talked about it. It was very shameful to talk about it. But I feel like nowadays so many people get it as like, people are like in their 20s getting Botox and things like that. It's just more common, or almost like more, unfortunately, like I think the kind of peer pressure for just like the average person to look really good. Like my job is not my face, but I feel a pressure sometimes. Anyway, I just think, I wonder how it's going to be a different reading experience reading it nowadays, where it's much more, I mean, the filters, Botox, mini procedures, all of this stuff. I wonder how it's going to be different living in the world that I'm living in today, nearly 20 years later. So let's begin, shall we? I have it on my Kindle. Let's go. What? Okay, I wasn't actually expecting this to be funny. The first line of this book. I'm gonna read you the whole first paragraph, actually. First sentence. The early summer sky was the color of cat vomit. What a way to start a book. Any other summer, a sunset like this would have been beautiful, but nothing has been beautiful since Paris turned pretty. Losing your best friend sucks, even if it's only for 3 months and 2 days. Okay, so that's correct. Here we go. Carrie was right. Oh my gosh, my memory is so good. Yes, there is a place called New Pretty Town where the new pretties go and like party. And Tally can see it from her home across I'm assuming it's across the water. I don't know why I keep thinking, yeah, there's a river. Okay. So it's Buddha and Pest. It's pretty and ugly. So yes, the day that you turn 16, you are sent potentially to New Pretty Town. I don't know. Her last name is also Youngblood. I don't know why I find that funny. Her name is Tally Youngblood. But yeah, I do remember really liking this writing and how just like immediately I felt in it for a young adult novel. So I'll continue to read you just a little bit. And this is why maybe it's visually stuck in my head so well, is the description. So here we go. This is like the second paragraph. Tally Youngblood was waiting for darkness. She could see New Pretty Town through her open window. The party towers were already lit up, and snakes of burning torches marked flickering pathways through the pleasure gardens. A few hot air balloons pulled at their tethers against the darkening pink sky, their passengers shooting safety fireworks at other balloons and passing parasailers. Laughter and music skipped across the water like rocks thrown in just the right spin, their edges just as sharp against Tally's nerves. Around the outskirts of the city, cut off from the town by the black oval of the river, everything was in darkness. Everyone ugly was in bed by now. Oh, and she also has like a smart, like this is a smart tech future. So she has like a ring that she can talk to be like, turn off the lights, which currently I don't even know how to turn on the lights in my house without Siri. But at the time when this was written, this was very techie. This was very futuristic. So she also has a toothbrush pill. Like, she doesn't have to brush her teeth. She just chews a chewable pill. I'll report back. I'm not going to read you the whole book, but in we go. Okay, but the town is called Uglyville. Sounds like people defending their faves on social media. For what? For what? Okay, yeah, I can't help comparing this to social media and kind of influencers and things like that. Like, what if Instagram went down? What if, like, with this TikTok ban, like, everything would just come tumbling down, right? I'm only on page 11. I feel like I'm reading too much into this, but yeah, basically her best friend, Paris, who's a boy, I thought it was a girl. Anyway, Paris is 3 months older than her, so he got turned pretty, and it has been radio silence. And this was like a person that she talked to every second of every day since she was a baby. So she misses him. She needs to talk to him. And they've like kind of figured out a way to sneak into Pretty Town, like cross the river. But this time she's going further than she ever has because she thinks she knows where Paris is, and she just wants to check if he's okay, you know? So she is infiltrating. Luckily, Pretty Town is just like a million different simultaneous parties going on. So she found one masquerade, and so she has a mask, and she's running around trying to find him. The mansion that he's staying at is apparently the worst kind because the brand new Pretties have to live in a big dormitory. So we're gonna try and find him in this giant party dorm. We have now, as Tally was escaping New Pretty Town, she ran into Shay, who is a girl who happens to share her birthday, and all of her friends have also already turned pretty, so they're like, great, we'll be lonely together. They bond. Shay teaches Tally how to use a hovercraft, which I do distinctly remember. There's a lot of hovercraft going on in this book. But they're talking about like what's gonna happen when we turn pretty. And Tally is like, ooh, here, let me show you my mock-ups of like what I want my face to look like. And she had a bunch of different ways that she like tweaked her face, whatever. Shay has never made one, and Tally is shocked. And they're called morphos, these like idealized photos of themselves. She says, everyone made morphos, even the littlies, even like young kids who are too young for their facial structures to have even set. It was a great waste of the day figuring out all the different ways you could look when you finally became pretty. And that is such a thing now with like, what's it called? Facetune, like all the ways that you can just slightly alter your face is such a thing that we do currently. But what I forgot about this book is like the way that they justify the becoming pretty thing is they link it all back to biology, and like it's just, you know, survival of the fittest. They mention like having bigger eyes is better because it makes you look innocent, so people like will trust you. Any other differences is like a signal that I'm healthy. If we reproduce together, we'll have healthy children. Her best friend, they did like a blood pact, so they had a scar on their hand, and he got rid of that because he got new skin. So like having soft hands is a signal that you have not had to do hard labor, and you're also clever enough that you've never gotten in like trouble where you've gotten a scar or anything like that. So in Tally's mind, it's all like, no, this is good for society, this is all for like, it's just biology. We love pretty people because that's how we're trained. Shay mentions, for some reason, Cleopatra plays a big role in this book. Like they have a Cleopatra street or whatever. And Shay mentions, Tally shows a mock-up of like, ooh, I'm kind of going for like a Cleopatra look. And Shay says, I actually read that the real Cleopatra wasn't even that great looking. She seduced everyone with how clever she was. So yeah, it's a little simplistic. Like this is definitely like a true YA. So the dialogue, it like reads young, but that's what it is. So it's just quite interesting, like all these little things that we are currently doing. Catching up, 30% update, breezing through this. Another scene that is burned into my mind that I like remembered. Shay brings Tally out to what are called the Rusty Ruins, so the ruins of society that used to exist there. And they're playing with their hoverboards, and there's a roller coaster, like a roller coaster track. And so they use the hoverboards, like they need metal in order to hover. So they like go on the roller coaster track. For some reason, that also is like burned into my mind. Shay eventually lets us know that there is some mysterious person named David who lives out way past the ruins. And there may or may not be a society where people have decided to opt out of this pretty world. On the day before they're supposed to turn pretty, Shay runs away, tries to convince Tally, but Tally's like, no, listen, not for me. So Shay runs away, gives her a letter of clues of how to get to the place in case she ever changes her mind, and off she goes. When Tally goes in to get her surgery, she gets picked up by someone who's not a pretty. They're kind of, instead of looking like vulnerable and you just want to love them and trust them, they look very cold and intimidating. So these people are from the special circumstances department. They need Tally to tell them where Shay is because they want to kind of bust up this ugly gang. They're trying to spin it in a way of like, Shay was brainwashed and kidnapped and really you're saving her. And if you don't tell us, if you don't help us, you will remain ugly forever. So for a bit, surprisingly, Tally actually keeps the secret. But then Paris, her best friend, comes to visit to be like, what the hell? Why aren't you pretty yet? And he kind of convinces her. He's like, listen, you made a promise to Shay to keep her secret, but you also made a promise to me that we were going to be best friends forever, being pretty together, having the time of our lives. So which secret, like which promise are you going to keep? And so she decides to help the special circumstances people. And it seems like this city, like Uglyville and New Pretty Town, that's just one city. There seems to be other cities outside, but it's kind of like no one knows about it. Like Tally doesn't know about other cities and things like that. It seems like everybody's kind of low-key kept in the dark. Okay, so that's where we are. Let's see if she will actually help these people. They're called the Cruel Pretties. Okay, so she agrees to help, but then they're like, well, all right, here's your pack. Go follow those directions and try to find them. Good luck. Okay, now 40% update. She's going off on her adventure, whatever, typical shenanigans, getting lost, whatever. She runs into a bunch of pretties that are basically doing controlled burns of the forest that she was in. And they're doing it because a long time ago, there was this particular flower that was considered to be the most beautiful flower. Everybody wanted some, so this botanist figured out how to reproduce them really well, and they became a weed. And they're kind of explaining to her, like, we need to kill it off. And they're basically talking about how dangerous a monoculture is. You need to have diversity in everything in order to keep a kind of balance and keep things from, basically the flowers were so beautiful that they ended up choking everything around it, got rid of everything else. And then once only the beautiful thing remained, these beautiful flowers, they also couldn't live. They didn't have anything to support them. The hummingbird, like all of the things that they needed around them to live had died out. And so they ended up dying as well. Victims of their own success, leaving a wasteland behind, biological zero. "50% update, officially reaching territory that I do not remember." So she makes it to Smoke, which is the outside city of ugly people. And it's mostly young people, like 18-year-olds and younger. They have one lady who's the boss and she's like in her 40s. And they're basically just living in the forest, making do. Part of Tally is actually really enjoying this. The author is definitely showing that like if you travel, if you leave your like one concentrated environment, you see that the world is much bigger, and like the things that you thought were the most important maybe aren't the most important things in the world. But what I didn't remember, and so she's kind of like enjoying, she's confused because like a lot of these like ugly kids are very confident. You know, pretties aren't supposed to work or think. They're just supposed to like play, right? But these guys are like constructing houses and thinking about how to run a small community and things like that. So they have like self-confidence that comes from not their looks, but from the things that they do. But the thing that I didn't remember is David. David is like the outside contact, right? He, for some reason, like really trusts Tally. And Tally has this pendant that she's supposed to activate. I'm sorry if you can hear the beeping. There's just construction outside. Tally has this pendant that she's supposed to press, and it will give the GPS signal, and the special circumstances forces can come in, right? But she hasn't pressed it yet because she's just really interested in this and like doesn't want to screw things up for Shay, right? But for whatever reason, David really trusts Tally, and he's like, listen, I can tell that like you're still on the fence about this, confused, interested, taking it more seriously than other people. So I'm gonna trust you with a secret. And David was never in the city. He was born outside. His parents were Pretties, and they left. They were doctors, and you get like multiple surgeries. So you get your ugly, and then you are a new pretty, and then in your like 30s you get made into a middle pretty, and then in your like 60s you get put into old pretty, I guess. So they were like in their middle pretties, left, and they reversed the surgery somehow. Like they became unpretty, and Tally is like, damn, they like cut themselves up in the woods, like was that sanitary? And he says something really cryptic which I don't understand, and we're gonna have to find out together. But basically she says they cut each other out here in the wild to make themselves. Her throat closed on the word as if she was going to gag. No, David said, they didn't use surgery. So how did they undo their pretty surgery, which is like described to most people as like shaving bones and you get new skin? How did they undo it without surgery? If I look like a changed person, it's because I am. I just took a very deep nap. Before I fell asleep, we got the secret. So David bothers me. David's annoying. David just really trusts Tally, and I don't quite know why. I think he just has a big old crush on her, which is confirmed in a couple of seconds. But before that, he decides to take Tally to meet his parents because he kind of pieces it together that she didn't come to smoke because she didn't want to turn pretty. She came here because of Shay. He thinks it's because like she wanted to check on her, she misses her. It's not because she's gonna turn her into the government. But like he guesses correctly in one way that she's not fully on board with their idea of society. And so he's like, listen, before, like, if you decide to go back and become pretty, because apparently that's a thing you can do, which doesn't make any sense to me. But he's like, if you decide to go back, I need to tell you something. My parents need to tell you something. So they go meet the parents, and it turns out that they were the doctors that were the cosmetic surgeons. Like they were in charge of making people pretty. And they were seemingly fine with it until they realized that during the procedure, for whatever reason, like I guess there are multiple doctors, right? They just did the kind of outer bits. They started to notice that all of their patients, after going through the pretty surgery, had these lesions, like these cuts or something, on their brains. And weirder still, they would like do a couple tests, they'd run, check up on people, and people who had jobs that required, I guess, like critical thinking, decision making, Their lesions were gone, went away, were taken away, whatever. But people who were just like normal pretty people had these marks on their brains and they basically couldn't think critically. So that's why like everything is just peaceful and like whatever, go with the flow, because nobody thinks. They wanted to come forward with this information thinking it was like a bad thing, and the government basically told them like either you forget this ever happened or you, whatever the other or was, they chose to run away. And the whole like they didn't use surgery to undo their pretty operation. I thought it was going to be some cool revelation. It's basically they do the surgery and a lot of it is basically just like putting shit in your face, like not quite fillers but like plastic stuff in your face. So eventually it melts. Like if you take enough of this particular medicine or whatever, the surgery will kind of melt. So like their eyes are still, like their eye color is still the same and stuff like that, but for the most part, like the structural stuff, they're kind of as close as they could get to their natural self. Once Tally figures that out, she still is on the fence. She's like, oh, thanks for telling me. That's kind of weird. They start walking back to Smoke. David is like, listen, you're just not like the other girls. They share a little kiss. They have a little moment. And she decides like, yeah, you know what? I am gonna stay because David called her beautiful. And her reaction was, am I more beautiful than Shay? And both of them, like even herself, she was like, shit, that was a shitty question to ask. Like they were both kind of shocked that she even thought that. But he said, yeah, you are prettier than Shay. So she decides like, okay, I'm not going to ruin everyone's lives and betray everyone. So she takes off her pendant that was her little GPS tracker that she was supposed to trigger, throws it in the fire, and wouldn't you know it, a couple hours later, they go to sleep. A couple hours later, the special circumstances show up. Because why would you why not just bury it? I don't know. She gets captured. We have this one boy named Croy who is very suspicious of her from the get-go because he didn't believe her story of her running away. But she, for some reason, got arrested too. And so Croy is like, oh my gosh, maybe I'm wrong about you. And also David is missing. So, and now Tally has to answer for her crimes.
Okay. Oh, finished The Uglies, the first book. So, where did I leave you off? She throws the freaking tracker in the fire. She gets caught. She manages to escape. She finds David, who also wasn't there. So he didn't get caught either. They decide they need to go back to the city, rescue their friends that got taken back, and they do so. However, they get there not quite in time. First, David's dad got killed. He got taken away for an operation and never came back. So he's killed, but remember that detail. Unless I see a body, I'm not believing anything. So he was allegedly killed on the operating table. Then Shay got turned pretty. Shay is like the dumb, bubbly, I'm just so happy to be here. But they managed to still break everybody out, and now they are hiding out in kind of the ruins area, I guess. They got a couple other uglies to help them, so they're spreading the word. Within the young ugly community, people know about the brain legions, basically a small, quiet rebellion is growing. And they want to save Shay. They want Shay's mind to heal, but David's mom, who is the doctor, who has these pills that she thinks can get these to heal, she won't do it on someone who isn't cooperating. And Shay is very much I'm happy this way. I don't want to fix my brain. And there's a 1% chance that the pills will turn you into a vegetable, basically. So David's mom is absolutely not, we're not doing this. I need a willing test subject. So Tally is send me back. I'll get the operation. I'll become pretty. And I give you permission to give me the pills. And hopefully they work and I come back. She confesses to David everything that happened. And the book ends with her walking into the clinic, and she says, hi, my name is Tally Youngblood. Make me pretty. So, also, another little tidbit that I feel is going to show up in the next books is the Rusties, which is like the older society, like basically our society, right? We use a lot of oil and blah, 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 blah. Their society collapsed because of something infected the oil, and after that, like, society collapsed. Basically, like, the society was already like kind of on a downfall, but then they got a big shove from this action. Normally in history classes, Uglies and Pretties love to talk about how stupid the Rusties were. So it's weird that Tally doesn't know this part of Rusty history, and that makes me think that the Pretties and whoever started that society had something to do with the takedown. And the orchids, invasive species, is creating a desert. So as it takes over the environment and then eventually dies itself, all that it leaves behind is like this barren desert. Nothing can grow there. So that's also spreading. That's what's going on. I'm going to leave you for the next book. I'm going to start it tomorrow. I'm going to take a break. But yeah, it's definitely too young for me, the dialogue and stuff like that, but I totally understand why it was such a hit in middle school. And I do think that the conversations are quite interesting, especially nowadays with like the kind of influencer community. Basically, they can do whatever they want because they're pretty and dumb, you know, and it's okay. Like, we love them for it. She even mentioned, like, when she saw Shay, like, her first reaction was like, I just want Shay to like me, and I just want her, like, to make her happy and make her laugh, because, like, wouldn't that be amazing to have this beautiful person like me, you know? So yeah, feels hitting pretty close to home. But anyway, we'll continue this tomorrow. I'll catch you later. See you for the Pretties. A new day, starting the Pretties, 360 pages. All of these books are available at my library, so I have them all ready to go. We'll see how many I can get through. Starting now, part 1, Sleeping Beauty, and the quote is, "Remember that the most beautiful things in the world are the most useless." In we go. I think there's a tiny bit of a, from what I can see right now, tiny bit of a time jump. I think Tally is pretty. So 12% update. My God, this is hard to read because it's a month later, because Tally and Shay and the gang have all turned pretty. They are so dumb and they speak in a very silly way. Like, everything is, this was kind of a trend in, I would say, the early 2000s of, in order to show how vapid someone is, they needed to speak in a really obviously vapid way. So they would be like, oh my God, that's totally bogus. Wow, that's pretty like, there's all these slang words, but they aren't like grammatically correct. Very difficult to read. They're very obsessed with their looks. It's not a fun read. However, she went to a party. Croy, who we remember is the guy who didn't trust her, he breaks into the party and tries to communicate with her. And in that, there's like a scuffle. She falls and gets a cut on her like eye. And she decides to keep the scar for a little bit, because isn't that odd that scar, even though it's technically an imperfection, it sets her apart and she feels very cool, because she's kind of famous in New Pretty Town because her and Shay are considered like criminals, so they have like a cool story to them. But isn't that interesting that the thing she likes about herself and that sets her apart is a slight imperfection? She actually says the scar was perfect. So anyway, she's having memory issues. She doesn't really remember anything, but it's just really difficult when everything she says is like, oh my God, he's totally ugly. They keep calling things bubbly. I don't know what that means, but they're like, oh my gosh, nothing is as bubbly as her dive off of the tower last night. Like, that's not bubbly enough. I want to be more bubbly.
Pretty bogus, huh? Totally criminal looking. Not so many millihelens. Like, they rank things in terms of saying something is beautiful. They use Helen, as in Helen of Troy, as an example. But it's like, what are they saying? This is how every conversation has been for the past 50 pages. Yeah, this book says bubbly 154 times in a 360 page book. Oh, thank God. So she follows the instructions that Croy gave her with the help of Zane, who is like a super pretty boy, but apparently he knew Shay and Croy and like was maybe going to run away to smoke before he became Pretty. So he's helping Tally. But anyway, she does this whole thing, follows these instructions, and she finds the letter she wrote herself at the end of the first book. Okay, so hopefully we will soon get her brain back so that I don't have to read Bubbly one more damn time. Goodness gracious, an update. Croy left Tally 2 pills. You're supposed to take 2 pills at a time. And she didn't want to take them, but Zane convinced her that they could each take 1. So they're both like sort of half cured a little bit. They're still dumb, but like they remember things and they realize that like something is wrong. Zane is having weird effects from the pill. He's having really bad headaches, which is scary because one of the side effects of the pill was like going brain dead. They also have started like a romantic relationship, which is weird, and I don't think that was necessary, but anyway, they're trying to act normal, but obviously not well enough, and the special circumstances department noticed and is trying to recruit Tally. Ooh, that's intriguing. Okay, a nice big update because I haven't updated in a while, and honestly, this book is committing to the bit, but in an unreadable way. The way that they speak, there's like a pretty language, not fun to read. But what has happened, I think I left you off with Zane and Tally each took a pill. So they come up with a bunch of different plans. Honestly, like most of this book is just them trying to get their stupid bracelets off. They have like tracking bracelets on them. Anyway, they finally figure out how to get them off. They steal a hot air balloon to run away. Shay is pissed because they didn't, like, Tally gave Zane a pill, even though like in the circumstances there was no way she could have taken it and hidden the pill and given it to Shay. Anyway, Shay's pissed, so they aren't talking to each other, but Shay knows that there is a way to break out of the Pretty thing, is unfortunately to cut herself. That is a way that she can, like, the pain kind of breaks her out and like focuses her and makes her feel less like a dumb Pretty. So she's dealing with that, but Tally and Zane and Fausto, who's this rando who shows up, he's like friends with Shay, whatever. They all escape via hot air balloon, but right before they're about to jump, everyone else has jumped except for Paris and Tally. And Paris says he doesn't want to go because he actually really likes being a Pretty, and he will be their man on the inside and like distract the guards and stuff. But now they've argued so much that they're in a place where Tally can't jump out of the hot air balloon. So now they're trying to find a way to jump out of the hot air balloon. And that's that. So long story short, when she falls, she almost dies, but she is eventually rescued / found by this group of people who are living, we soon find, are living on essentially a reservation. So Pretties allow certain civilizations to live their lives, but they surround them with this boundary, so they can't leave either. They're just sort of there, and then they study them. It's like this weird experiment. Honestly, kind of uncomfortable to read. But they think that she is a god because she fell from the sky and she's pretty, but she's broke. Honestly, this is a book that's getting pretty unreadable. I just kind of want to know what happens at the end. So I don't love the last sentence of this quote, but this is essentially what this book is talking about, that, you know, we've got to learn to think for ourselves, basically. Okay, Pretty update. Finished the book. Skimmed it so hard because, like I said, it's unreadable, but the ideas are interesting. Yes, turns out that reservation is a experiment run by special circumstances trying to understand human nature more. So Tally's like, okay, add that to my list. I have to go save the people in the reservation. But she ends up escaping the boundary around the reservation, finds New Smoke, finds David, finds his mom, who she was kind of mean in the first book, but now she's like horrible. She's like kind of turned into a villain. She's doesn't trust Tally, really hates her, says just like really kind of petty things to her. I don't like this doctor. She's not acting very doctor-esque. Turns out the reason why Zane is having issues with the pills is because, and this is where Maddie gives Tally so much shit. She's like, ugh, I should have never trusted a Pretty to cure herself. But she never explained. She just said like, oh, you need some medicine. But she didn't explain that like, I'm gonna give you 2 pills. You need to take both of them. Like they each do different things. Like how was she supposed to know? So she was like, oh, 2 pills here, I'll take one, you take one. Split the cure, right? So Zane got the pill that like does scary things to your brain, and then Tally got the pill that is supposed to like fix the side effects of the scary pill. So Tally actually didn't take any medicine that would have helped her. She basically just cured herself by like questioning things, wanting to, you know, escape from this world. So that's interesting. David is kind of a pill. We kind of love Zane now. David and his mom can like go away. But it turns out that as they're like, Zane is practically comatose at this point. As they're trying to help him, the specials find them because they put a tracker in Zane's tooth and they like can't get the tooth out because pretty teeth are made with the same material as airplane wing. Anyway, so Tally is like, I'm not leaving Zane. So she stays and they get taken back, but because her brain still technically has like the lesions and things like that, to the specials, she looks like she still is pretty and dumb. They like don't super question her, but they bring her back to Pretty Town and they meet up with Shay, who looks quite different now because she has been turned into a special. Shay works for special circumstances now. Tally is like trying to play the dumb pretty role, but Shay is not going to be tricked. So she just kind of blacks out, and the last thing she hears is Shay saying like, don't you know, Tally, you're just so special. And so they're gonna turn her into a special, whatever that means. Like, I don't know what that entails other than they look cruel pretty. I don't know if it's gonna mess with her brain or not, but so I don't know if we need to read the extras. How many pages is specials? Because if it's in the same speaking voice as, it's 374 pages, so just a little longer. Why is the font different? What's going on? I'm gonna cheat. I'm sorry. Let's see if the internet tells us. Okay, so it technically is just a trilogy, and then he added another book just for funsies, and then he started a side quest as well. Let's read the inspiration for the series. Interesting. In an interview, author Scott Westerfield talks about the inspiration behind the series. Westerfield thinks that the future will allow people greater control over their appearance. We're definitely heading, quote, we're definitely heading towards a world in which lots of people will get to decide how they look. That will change what we think of as beautiful and what beauty means to us, end quote. In light of this, Westerfield, quote, wanted to write a future in which these technologies were fairly common. Westerfield also cites Liking What You See, a documentary by Ted Chiang, as an inspiration. Oh, hey! Fun fact, Ted Chiang also wrote the short story that inspired Arrival, one of my favorite movies of all time. Additionally, the series shares many of its themes with the Twilight Zone episode Number 12 Looks Just Like You. Okay, time jump. Coming in a little bit later. I actually today, I had a long bus ride and I found the PDF of that short story and found it really fascinating. So if you are interested in the themes of the Uglies trilogy, but you're looking for perhaps a more adult version, but also a shorter version, this is a novelette, as I mentioned, called Liking What You See. And it's just a series of short POVs, almost like an interview with a bunch of different people who live in a society where there's something called cari, which is a kind of surgery you can get done to make your brain recognize faces, but not do the step that is judgment of those faces. So you can like recognize like, oh, that's a chin that is pointier. Or you're like, oh, I can recognize my mother. But you wouldn't then take the step of judging how attractive that person is physically, okay? And the story is mainly focused around this one college that is in the middle of a debate of whether or not they should require all of their students to get this. And one of our students has gone to a school, like a elementary through high school that requires all of its students have it. And she is really excited to turn hers off and be able to see who's attractive, you know, see herself especially. And so we talked to her, we talked to a couple other students,
her parents, etc. And it had some really interesting points. So I'll read you a couple, but also when I thought one way, because it's kind of written in a debate and we see all different sides of it, then I was like, wait, but maybe I'm wrong, but maybe I'm right, you know? So I think it's just more an interesting piece to think about. I didn't leave this with an opinion one way or the other if we should have this cali, okay? One of the main arguments is just talking about lookism, and for decades, people have been willing to talk about racism and sexism, but they're still reluctant to talk about lookism. Yet this prejudice against unattractive people is incredibly pervasive. People do it without even being taught by anyone, which is bad enough, but instead of combating this tendency, modern society actively reinforces it. Educating people, raising their awareness about this issue, all of that is essential, but it's not enough. That's where technology comes in. Think of caliagnosia as a kind of assisted maturity. It also talks about how these are like the pro-cali people. Girls have been told that their value is tied to their appearance, their accomplishments are always magnified if they're pretty and diminished if they're not. Even worse, some girls get the message that they can get through life relying just on their looks and then never develop their minds. This is the girl's mother of why she has chosen to have her daughter have this procedure. Being pretty is fundamentally a passive quality. Even when you work at it, you're working at being passive. I wanted Tamara to value herself in terms of what she could do, both with her mind and with her body, not in terms of how decorative she was. I didn't want her to be passive, and I'm pleased to say she hasn't turned out that way. I also thought this was interesting. So one of the worries about cali is that it will make everyone's face feel the same if you're looking at them. But that's not true. A person's face always reflects their personality, and if anything, cali makes that clearer. And I like this part. You know that saying that after a certain age, you are responsible for your face? With cali, you really appreciate how true that is. Some faces just look really bland, especially young, conventionally pretty ones. Without their physical beauty, those faces are just boring. But faces that are full of personality look as good as they ever did, maybe even better. It's like you're seeing something more essential about them. And I love that, like after a certain age, your personality has carved your face if you let it. And I like that. I like that idea. But then those who are opposed say things like, of course it's wrong to judge people by their appearance, but this blindness isn't the answer. Education is. It wouldn't be maturity. It would be letting an expert system make your decisions for you. Maturity means seeing the differences but realizing they don't matter. There's no technological shortcut. Also, our main girl realizes that she's pretty because she had her cali turned off so she can see herself, and she reaches out to her ex-boyfriend who dumped her and convinces him to turn off his cali as well so that he can see her appearance, and hopefully that would make him decide to date her because he's like, oh man, I let go of this hot chick, my bad, let's date again. But like, as the audience, we know that that's really toxic and you wouldn't want a guy back just because he finds you attractive, right? It's also talking about how looks can interfere with our relationships with other people. We become dissatisfied with the way ordinary people look just because they can't compare to supermodels. We've all heard about men who prefer virtual girlfriends over actual ones, but they're not the only ones who have been affected. The more time any of us spend with gorgeous digital apparitions around us, the more our relationships with real human beings are going to suffer. But then again, other people are kind of like, that seems like an exaggeration. I don't think looking at pretty people necessarily makes me not like my best friend who is not supermodel pretty, you know? Another anti one is, of course, beauty has been used as a tool of oppression, but eliminating beauty is not the answer. You can't liberate people by narrowing the scope of their experiences. That's positively Orwellian. What's needed is a woman-centered concept of beauty, one that lets all women feel good about themselves instead of making most of them feel bad. But basically, this debate isn't just about commercials and cosmetics. It's about determining what's the appropriate relationship between the mind and the body. Are we more fully realized when we minimize the physical part of our nature? And that, you have to agree, is a profound question. Anyway, I thought this was just really interesting, so I'm gonna link the PDF down below. It's available online. Just wanted to add that in there as a cool little aside. And back to Past Me. Okay, this takes place in the specials. Allegedly, Tally lives, this is blowing my mind. Allegedly, Tally lives in like what used to be Seattle, but then there's also mentions of Diego, which is San Diego. Okay, let's read the specials. I'm just gonna read you the synopsis because I'm just worried I'm putting myself in a reading slump because I'm not loving
reading it, but I just want to know what happens. So here we go. We have a 2-month time jump from when we faded to black and Shay turned Tally into a special. So these are surgically enhanced superhumans. So they do have like a bunch of these special body bits. They have enhanced senses, strength, and reflexes. And she has been turned into a super amped fighting machine engineered to keep the Uglies down and the Pretties stupid. So Tally has basically amnesia. She doesn't remember anything, so she is helping the specials do their thing. What the fuck? And then she goes to visit Zane in the hospital, and she discovers that while Zane is free of his lesions, his brain has been damaged, and his physical infirmity now disgusts her. So now she's like not into Zane because he's ill? What? So the brain operation part of it is giving them superiority. Like they have in their brain a feeling of superiority. So that's why she looks down on everyone. So they end up trying to chase New Smoke. That's how they end up in San Diego. So they have found an injectable cure. They're like spreading the cure everywhere. Tally meets up with David, ends up getting one of the like an injectable cure. So he's like, if you ever decide you want to be free, here's this. But she uses it instead to stab Dr. Cable, who's like the head of keeping the Pretties stupid, right? And because of that, she starts to lose her grip on everything, and people start to find out about things, and the cure starts to spread. And she decides not to get cured. She wants to stay special, like with her crazy fighting amazing body. She like cures herself. She's a free thinker, but she doesn't want to get her special body de-specialed. So everybody else seems to like, they're starting a new society, go off, do the thing, but she runs off with David to start the new special circumstances where she will live in the wild and ensure that nature is protected from mankind's excesses, because that was what the Rusties did, is that they did, and like what New Smoke actually is doing, they're seeing a lot of like deforestation and stuff. So like the Uglies aren't perfect either. So Tally is like, okay, we got rid of the Pretties and all of their shit, so now we can let the Uglies live, but we need to just like make sure we're being good to the earth. Well, I like the first book. That's all I got. I enjoyed the first book thoroughly. Thank you for being on this journey with me. I'm sorry that the books kind of got, but I just remember the first book being really, just having a real strong hold on me. And I do still think that the first book was really good. I really enjoyed it. Kind of lost the plot. Kind of interesting that he decided to write like 5 more novels in this world, but like, okay, do your thing, Scott. But yeah, The Uglies. I haven't watched the movie. Should I? If you have seen it, let me know. It has Joey King or whatever, kissing booth girl in it. So let me know if I should watch it, what you think. And if you read this, do you also have really strong memories of this series? Let me know. I do think it is interesting in this day and age that we do really have, I think, a genuine problem with our self-image and how much we are editing it, whether it is in film or in real life, going and getting procedures done. So I just think it's like weirdly a timely book, even though it was written 10 years ago. So that was The Uglies. I will leave it at that. Let me know if you have any other books that have like really shaped your adolescence. Hold on, you're falling. I will see you next time. So thank you again to Squarespace. I will have a link down below, but if you would like a free trial and 10% off of your first website or domain, you can go to squarespace.com/caricanread. Love them so much. Thank you, Squarespace, always. And yeah, I'm going to head out. But that was The Uglies. What a ride that was. I just like add that to the list of things that promised us hoverboards and we don't have them. So, okay, I'll catch you later. Thank you as always.